So, in the wintertime, what did your family do?
Well, we used to, wintertime, we used to live at Squaw Bay sometime, but quite often we had a house in Thunder Bay here, and we lived in Thunder Bay here. And my dad would do nothing in the wintertime, except during the war, he worked at Canada Car, yeah, yeah, for one winter or two, a couple of winters. But yeah, yeah.
So would there be any trapping?
Trap? No, my dad didn't trap. No,
Okay.
but when we were kids living out in Past Lake, we used to always have snares out for rabbits and that. And I always had a couple of small traps out to catch marten or mink and that. But most of the time we just caught mink and squirrels in them. Yeah. So we used to do that and come to town with them. And the fur dealers in town here would always give us $5 or $2 or something, or 50 cents for a squirrel, or $5 if it was a nice mink or something. So I sure felt rich when I had a mink and 3, 4 squirrels, boy. I was a millionaire.
So, your family had a house at Squaw Bay. Can you talk
Well,
about those things?
okay, but Squaw Bay, my uncle, when they moved up here from Rossport in the early 20s, my uncle had the steam tug and he had a big pile driver. And on the pile driver, he had a little building on it.
Okay.
And they had that parked in at Squaw Bay, and they used to stay in that in the winter time. My uncle sometime out in town or whatever, he was in that area. He'd stay in there, and then but most of the time he lived in town. My dad lived in town here or whatever, at Rossport. And then anyhow, 1929, my uncle decided he'd get some. And at about 24, the Danish settlement started down there, and the Danish people moved in. So we had 3 or 4 of the Danish people build this log cabin for him on the point there. We call it McKay's Point now. It's right next to, inside of Kidd Point and Squaw Bay there. So he built this log cabin there. Then later years we lived in there that in the early 40s and mid 30s and that. My mom and dad, they lived there in the wintertime sometime. And, yeah.
When you were living there, would you spend any time in Silver Islet?
Uh, when we were not when we were there, because we were just there in the wintertime, but in the summertime, quite often we used to run over to. My dad used to take us all on the boat, and we'd go to Silver Island, and go to the old store, and man, that was something else. It was a treat. Then we used to, in the mid '40s, the fishermen moved from what do you call that, T Harbor,
Yeah.
into Camp Bay down there, and then we used to go in there, and my dad knew some of the fishermen there, so we'd always go and visit with them and that. And the fishermen's wives there, they were Finnish Swedish women, and they were good bakers. So every time we went there, we always got some beautiful cookies, and yeah, it was a real treat. Yeah. And I can remember going to Silver Island one time with my dad, and there was a big building right in the bottom of Camp Bay, a huge building, and it was a friend of my dad's, and his name was Mr. Goodrow. And he was a partner with Guy and Goodrow that were commercial fishing at Point, had a big fishery at Point Magnet. And I can remember going in there with my dad as a little wee kid, and he had this beautiful boat in that boathouse and that thing there. And it was just amazing. And he had a marine railway there to pull that boat up and all that. And the building is still there, and you can see where the dock was, and you can print near. Today you could probably, if you knew, like I can go there, I can see, remember how it was when I was 4 or 5 years old. Yeah, yeah. So I always remember that, so going and seeing that there. And the old fellow used to give me a glass of milk and some cookies. Yeah, yeah.
They had cows?
I don't know where he got the milk from, but he had it there. Yeah.
Okay.
Then I also remember we used to go and visit with the Cross family, and they had a big fox farm at that time. I
Okay.
can remember as being a little kid there, still seeing them there when they still had the part of the fox farm yet. Yeah.